Discover the amazing, unexpected moments of medieval 1v1 fights that transformed history forever. The banner, a vibrant red, hung across the auditorium like the weight of Jack Miller's own dreams, a spectacle of ambition glaring back at him, highlighting how far he had strayed from aspiration. Once, he could have wielded a sword of his own, a metaphorical one, laying claim to victory in sports arenas. Now, he stood in front of a classroom filled with indifferent faces, sharing tales that felt more like shadows of history than passions filled with fire. He had succumbed to a monotonous routine of lectures, a cycle that threatened to smother what little spark remained within him. The ornate sword he discovered while rifling through his family's old belongings felt like a sign. Dust cloaked the blade, but the intricate etchings whispered stories of valor, of knights who fought epic battles not just against enemies, but fueled by the weight of honor and legacy. Yet here he was, trapped in a life stripped of those powerful narratives, ensnared by societal expectations and tinged with self-doubt. What did it mean, he wondered, to reclaim that sense of purpose? In the classroom, he spoke of the tragedies and triumphs of forgotten civilizations as if they were mere artifacts, but in truth, they echoed his very own disappointments. His heart raced with both excitement and fear, grappling with questions. Was it too late to rise again? Could he make his own story mean something? As research for the upcoming local history competition consumed him, he immersed himself in the intensity of medieval combat tales, the raw slips and slides of life and death in a duel. Every sentence sent a surge through him, but that enthusiasm met the cold reality of skepticism. The academic elitists around him dismissed his findings, sniping as if they were the very swords he studied, sharp, relentless, and deeply cutting. They would never understand the fear palpitating behind his every word, the battle raging within the confines of his own mind. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But the looming presence of Miss Stanton, a seasoned rival, overshadowed him. With her knowing smirk and disdainful glances, she turned the competition into personal warfare. Was she aware how her jealousy ignited his resolve while simultaneously threatening to drown it in doubt? Each undermining remark, every twisted interpretation of his findings felt like blows delivered by a strategic opponent, calculating and precise. The day loomed closer, every moment intensifying the pressure. Jack stood at the precipice of his own defining moment. The podium awaited him. Yet the doubts filled him more than air. Would he stand proud and deliver a message that could change the tides for himself? Or would his reverberating fears echo in the hollow halls of defeat, mirroring the hapless knights whose swords had failed them? Conflicted, he was filled with restless anticipation. Each breath a silent duel waged in the battle of his life. The outcome? An open wound, a question lingering. Who would truly win, the knight in the storied past or the man still searching for his own glory? The audience watched him, breathless in their uncertainty, mirroring Jack's turmoil, a simmering moment waiting to either erupt or fizzle into nothing. Jack paced the hall of the university, the polished floor reflecting both the overhead lights and the weight of his spiraling thoughts. Every step echoed in his mind, a reminder of the choice he faced. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through him, igniting remnants of his former self, an athlete, a competitor. The small, ornate sword in his bag no longer felt like just an artifact of family history. It now pulsed with a sense of urgency, a tool for transformation. Hadn't knights once wielded swords not just as weapons but as symbols? Could he embody that spirit and draw from it the courage to forge his own legacy? The competition was only days away, yet the noise of self-doubt grew louder than Miss Stanton's taunts. Each time her mocking laughter echoed in his memory, he felt the tension tiptoeing in his chest, close to breaking. Her critiques were sharp and targeted, leaving him doubting his ability to present his passion within the ancient walls of academia. Still, amid the dread, a new resolve began to breed. What if her disdain could fuel him? What if instead of shrinking from her sneering comments, he transformed them into the fire of his performance? He stopped at the entrance to the library, a sanctuary of knowledge but also a place tinged with memories of feeling small among giants. Today he felt different. He pushed against the heavy doors. Enlightenment awaited him within the towering shelves. Each title was a gateway, a potential weapon against the intellectual blockades he faced. He rifled through the bookshelves, searching not just for facts and dates, but for something more, a deeper understanding, a raw truth that he could channel in his presentation. As he absorbed the chronicles of ancient battles, he stumbled upon a passage about a knight who overcame insurmountable odds, often rallying his strength when confronted with despair. Jack felt a flicker of recognition. Like the knight, he was fighting a battle of his own. He scribbled notes, a play of strategy where courage met intellect. He began to formulate a plan, integrating unexpected angles that others had overlooked. He wasn't just going to bore his audience with the history of medieval combat. He was going to breathe life into their stories, uncovering the humanity behind the bravado. In a burst of creativity, he imagined delivering his presentation not from a podium, but from the perspective of an unseen scribe, chronicling the fight of a knight, a narration that felt personal and urgent. Each battle could embody a tumultuous struggle reflecting his own trials, encased in the tension of the past and the present. As he immersed himself, feeling the adrenaline rise again, a thrilling thought struck him. What if history could teach him as much about the battle over doubts as it did about actual warfare? Jack left the library, energized but unprepared for the inevitable encounter with Miss Stanton, who would surely be waiting to pounce. Just as he turned the corner, he bumped straight into her, eyes brimming with her usual mockery. "Still pining for the glory days, Miller?" she sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. But this time, instead of drowning in her words, Jack held his ground. "You'd be surprised how much a story can change when the perspective shifts," he shot back, surprising even himself with his boldness. Feeling the stirrings of a warrior's spirit within, Jack realized the coming days would demand everything. He had the fire to stand against naysayers, and an authentic voice that resonated with his newly found sense of self. The battle was no longer hers to win. As he stepped away, exhilaration coursed through him. He could feel the tension building. He was ready to embrace it, ready to challenge the narrative much like the knights of old. Yet, as he approached the competition date, the question loomed, casting a shadow over his resolve. Could he truly transform the tale of an underdog into a masterpiece worthy of applause? Or would fear still crease the edges of his story? Jack awoke early the next morning, a swirl of thoughts encircling his mind like a tempest. The sunlight filtered through his window, illuminating the room with the promise of a new day. It was the day he would finalize his presentation. As he dressed, he looked in the mirror and found a warrior staring back at him, determined, but also apprehensive. There was no turning back now. He had committed to a divergent path from the constant doubts that had plagued him. At breakfast, his mother-esque casual conversation about mundane topics felt distant, striking him as trivial compared to the weight he felt on his shoulders. Each bite was a reminder of the digital clock ticking down the hours. Jack was acutely aware of the time slipping away from him, but while he savored his oatmeal, his mind raced through speeches and narratives he had brainstormed during his late-night sessions. He tightened the laces of his sneakers, preparing for a morning jog, hoping to channel his anxiety into something positive. Running had always freed him, allowing both body and mind to align in a focused rhythm. As his footfalls echoed on the pavement, rhythmically pounding in time with his heartbeat, he pondered the stories he intended to tell, a narrative captured between scholarly rigor and the visceral reality of combat. With each lap he completed around the track, an empowering thought passed through him. He could distill the essence of history into his performance. What he needed was clarity, a beacon to guide his narrative. He returned to his apartment, exhilarated from the run, and sat at his desk, the sword glinting in the morning light beside him, urging him to seize the opportunity. The hours that followed were a blend of fervent writing and low moments of self-reflection. As he crafted his presentation, he discovered layers to his connection with the past. the knights were not far removed from him. They faced their enemies with an unflinching heart, much like he needed to combat the fears that threatened to hold him captive. In an unexpected moment of brilliance, Jack decided to incorporate a personal story, one rooted in his own vulnerability. How had he once felt like an outsider in both sports and academics? How had he fought to gain acceptance and resilience? Seeing the audience before him as comrades in understanding rather than adversaries began to shift his perspective. By intertwining personal experiences with historical narratives, he hoped to render the knights not as distant figures on dusty pages, but as relatable souls in tumultuous times. Still, despite his growing momentum, doubt arrived uninvited. Would his approach resonate? The specter of Ms. Stanton lingered, mocking him in the corners of his mind. Could she dismantle his newly built narrative with a single sentence? Her words were dangerous things, sharp as the blade at his side. The stakes were much higher now. He was crafting a narrative that required honesty, showing his raw, unfiltered self. That evening, as he rehearsed in front of a mirror, each word felt more authentic than it had before. The energy surged through him. This was his story to tell, after all. It was no longer a question of competing. It was about connecting. With each repetition, he caught glimpses of the warrior spirit igniting within him. Following his practice, Jack collapsed onto his bed, engulfed by fatigue but racing thoughts. Would he be able to carry the weight of this story through? Just as sleep began to sweep over him, a jolt of realization struck. He needed to believe as fiercely in his own narrative as he had come to believe in the historic tales of knights. The next day brought final preparations, the stage set before him like a battlefield, concealed palm trees and a spotlight ready to illuminate his journey. Yet, as he pushed the door open to the venue, a chill ran down his spine. Would he rise as the scribe of his own story, or fall to the weight of expectations? The moment of truth was looming. What if this battle didn't just determine his academic success but set the course for his entire life? Jack could almost hear the echo of ancient warriors urging him forward. As he stepped onto the stage, one question crystallized in his mind. Was he ready to confront not just the audience, but the very doubts that had held him captive for so long? The spotlight struck Jack with an intensity that amplified the cadence of his heartbeat, making the world around him dissolve into a blur. He stood at the center of a stage, the polished floor reflecting the harsh lights, casting long shadows that felt like a tangible weight upon his shoulders. His heart raced not merely in anticipation of the audience's gaze, but under the pressure of what he was about to unveil. With a steadying breath, he called forth the training he'd nurtured over the weeks. The audience, a sea of unfamiliar faces, seemed to fade as he focused on the message etched in his mind. The stories of knights, drawn from pages of history, beckoned to him like comrades in arms. Imagine a battlefield, he began, his voice quaking slightly, but finding its strength, where courage was the only armor for those who stood against their fate. He let his words hang in the air, planting seeds of curiosity. The initial nerves retreated, uncovering the deeper purpose behind his presentation. Connection. As Jack delved deeper into the tales of valor and fear, he felt an unshackling sensation, as if he were peeling away layers of protective armor he had worn for years. He shared how he had once felt isolated in a world that seemed to favor the confident, the extroverted. Drawing parallels between his experiences and the tumultuous lives of the knights, he began to see old fears as nothing more than shadows. He paused, allowing personal vulnerability to wash over him, just like those knights had endured their trials. But the true armor, he said, heart-pounding, is belief. The belief that our past does not dictate our future. The words flowed like an invocation, transforming doubt into resolve. Jack pressed on, recounting a pivotal moment from his childhood, a day on the soccer field when he faced ridicule, discomfort tinting every interaction. Just as the knights confronted their foes, he explained, "I learned to stand tall, to run with abandon despite the voices telling me to shrink." For a fleeting moment, he locked eyes with an audience member. A slight nod from her conveyed understanding, igniting a flame of confidence within him. Yet, with every peak in the narrative, A shadow of doubt threatened to seep back in. What if Ms. Stanton's critique shattered the very foundations he was trying to build? Would he become the target of ridicule he once feared? But rather than succumb to that fear, he ignited fierce determination to confront it head-on. As the presentation unfolded, Jack witnessed engagement among the crowd. Faces softened. Expressions leaned forward as if participants in the journey. Each smile, each glimmer of recognition pushed him further into the moment. The realization that his story resonated sparked something profound inside him, a sense of belonging woven into the fabric of human experience. But just as Jack prepared to reach a climactic conclusion, the echo of Ms. Stanton's skepticism slithered into his thoughts. The hard truth remained. Could he truly claim victory over the layered fears within him, or was this battle destined to repeat itself? Confronted with the prospect of potential rejection, doubt began to claw back. In the final moments, he recalled the warriors he had honored through his presentation. They had all faced stark choices, with the stakes of life itself hanging in the balance. Stepping forward, he pledged to the audience, "Every one of us has our battles to fight. Today, I stand as a warrior not just for myself, but for every person who feels like their story deserves to be heard." He closed his eyes for a brief moment, harnessing the collective energy of the audience, a surge of courage that roared like a gust of wind. As he opened his eyes wide, the final words flowed forth. "Let us shed our fears, for together we can forge our own legacies." With those words, he finished, the applause surrounding him like a cloak woven from shared understanding and empathy. Yet, as his heart raced in the aftermath, Jack was left with a looming question. Had he truly conquered the fears that had once held him captive, or had he merely taken the first step into a new arena of battles yet to come? The adrenaline subsided slowly after his impassioned speech, and Jack stepped off the stage, the clamor of applause fading into the background of muffled conversations. He leaned against the cool wall, his mind a tempest of conflicting emotions. Had he really connected with those strangers? Or was he still that unsure boy from the soccer field, always playing defense against the world? As he watched attendees mingle, laughter punctuating the somber atmosphere, a challenge loomed. Miss Stanton's discerning gaze cut through the sphere of buoyancy. He had to confront her, to seek her evaluation and critique. The thought sent a ripple of apprehension through him. What if she saw only the cracks in his bravado, the nerves that still flickered within? Yet, he knew avoiding her would unravel the resolve he had gained on stage. Jack straightened, shaking off the lingering trepidation. He had spoken of warriors facing battles. It was time to embrace his own. With a deep breath, he strode toward the small group where Miss Stanton stood, an impenetrable fortress of professionalism. She was engaged in conversation, but upon catching his eye, she gestured him over. "Jack, that was a commendable presentation," she began once the polite chatter settled. "You wove your narrative well, but I can't help but feel there's an arena left unexplored." Her appraisal was keen, attentive. It could serve as a key to deeper understanding or a blade to cut through his newfound confidence. "Thank you, Ms. Stanton. I appreciate your feedback. What exactly do you mean by unexplored?" His voice trembled slightly, but he fought to keep his composure intact. The confrontation had begun. "Your stories are powerful, but they hover on the surface. What lies beneath those tales of knights? What personal truths did they elicit from your own experiences?" She leaned in slightly, her eyes piercing. Jack's pulse quickened. She was asking him to dig deeper, to reveal not just the polished version of his narrative, but the raw edges he tried to cover. "I suppose what I struggle with is," he hesitated, grappling with the vulnerability she demanded. The fond memories of nights turned shadowy, revealing moments of his past he swept under the rug. The derision of peers loomed large. "I struggle with trusting my voice. Just like those nights, I had moments where retreat seemed easier than fighting back." "Then hesitate no longer, Jack. Take your armor off. You need to show them you're not just a storyteller. You're a warrior in your own right. Revelations come from a place of discomfort. Are you willing to go there?" Her voice steadied his resolve. The questions bombarded him, How deeply was he willing to share? Jack swallowed hard. She was right. Courage was not merely in storytelling but in exposing the wounds that fashioned one's narrative. He realized it was time for a more profound transformation, to invite his audience into his uncertainty and doubt, showcasing how he wrestled with fear as fiercely as knights battled their foes. "Give me time," he murmured, conviction solidifying the resolve in his tone. "I expect nothing less than your best, Jack. You have the makings of a true leader, but it requires stepping into the vulnerable." Miss Stanton's words hung in the air long after she turned to continue mingling, leaving his mind reeling. Each realization felt like a flickering flame, illuminating paths he could explore if he dared to peel back layers he had so carefully constructed over the years. Could he unravel these remnants of self-doubt before an audience eager for authenticity? As he stepped away from the crowd, Jack felt the weight of the new challenge settle on his shoulders. Embracing his vulnerability might be the key to unlocking his potential. He would have to reflect deeply on his journey, articulate the true battles in his life. With purpose surging through him, he considered the next steps. What truths would he choose to reveal, and how would they shape his evolving narrative? But an ominous question loomed. Could he confront the very fears he had dared to share so openly? The time had come to face the depths of his own story, unearthing elements he feared might prove too raw, too revealing. Each word could either fortify his stance or shatter him again. With the pulse of trepidation pushing him forward, Jack realized he had embarked on a new quest, one that would challenge both his heart and mind far beyond the stage. How would he rise to meet this upcoming battle against self-imposed limitations? The following days were heavy with introspection, and Jack found himself enveloped in a haze of uncertainty and anticipation. Ideas missed their mark as he stared at the blank page in front of him, the words he'd once so confidently spun now elusive. His earlier resolve to confront his hidden truths felt shaky, a tightrope he feared to walk. Each idle moment spiraled into self-critical thoughts. Would revealing his insecurities undermine him? Or could it, instead, give him the voice he so desperately sought? Jack returned to his routine, engrossed in researching knights and their legacies. Yet something shifted in his approach. He scoured articles that chimed with vulnerability and authenticity. The stories of renowned figures revealed their struggles, misgiven journeys through fear and self-doubt leading to the accolades he now coveted. The knights he admired had their own battles with failure and heartache. It was just that their tales had been polished, their vulnerabilities hidden beneath layers of heroic triumph. As he gathered inspiration, he initiated deeper conversations with friends, hoping to glean insight into their own narratives. "What is a story from your life that made you question who you are?" he asked Sarah, a close friend and budding artist. Her laughter faded into silence as she pondered, eyes drifting to the ground. "Oh, Jack, there is something ridiculous about sharing the ugly parts of ourselves, right? No one wants to be seen as weak," she finally admitted. Her candid admission resonated with him. Perhaps that repulsion she felt mirrored his apprehension. Encouraged, Jack decided to push himself farther. He scheduled a meet-up with Miss Stanton, unwilling to let her initial encouragement remain as just a fleeting moment of fleeting motivation. As he approached her office, he wrestled with doubt, his stomach twisting into knots. Her office door loomed ahead, an imposing barrier to this new chapter of authenticity. Upon entering, Miss Stanton's attentive gaze pierced through his anxious facade. "You seem pensive," she remarked, inviting him to share. "Honestly, I am terrified. I want to speak from a place of courage, but I'm struggling to know how far to go. What if it's too raw? What if I expose too much?" Jack's words spilled out, a torrent of his internal conflict laid bare. Miss Stanton leaned back contemplatively. "Authenticity requires bravery, Jack. Sometimes the parts that frighten us most are precisely what resonates with others. Remember, every battle a warrior faces has its scars. They are not markers of defeat but rather signs of survival. The key is not in revealing everything, but in being genuine." Genuine. The word echoed in Jack's mind, forging connections between his desire for authenticity and the reality of human vulnerability. He realized he didn't need to disclose every struggle but instead focus on the pivotal moments that shaped who he was, those staunchly felt battles that would resonate with others. With this knowledge, Jack sketched out key memories shaped by fear and resilience. Those moments where he remained on the edge of retreat, but chose to face his demons instead. The recollection of his relentless bullying surfaced, and alongside it, the small victories of standing up for himself, moments that made him feel like a warrior. As he articulated these memories, he felt a flicker of power. Each recollection illuminated a facet of truth he could embrace. The flares of self-doubt transformed into stepping stones toward growth. A rush of clarity washed over him, merging his past and present. Perhaps in sharing those fears, he could inspire others to confront their own. Leaving the office, a new fire ignited within him, eclipsing the lingering fear. He understood he was not just preparing to stand in front of an audience but to invite them into parts of his life, connecting with them in shared struggles. But as he reached for his pen, ready to write, he hesitated. What if this raw honesty raised more questions than it answered? Would the audience's reaction resonate with his experiences, or would it distance him further? The uncertainty swirled back, tightening around his resolve. It dawned upon him that his journey had merely begun. The fear of judgment still loomed large. How would he navigate this treacherous terrain of exposure? What stories could he weave that would connect his past to his present, forging a path forward rather than retreating back to the defense? Jack re-entered his daily rhythm with determination thumping like a drum in his chest, knowing the next stage of his evolution demanded not just courage but readiness to face the unexpected consequences of his authenticity. The true struggle had arrived. Would he rise as a knight or falter into self-doubt once again? In the days that followed, Jack found himself oscillating between motivation and doubt, an emotional pendulum that left him breathless. He settled into his ritual of researching nights, but this time with a clearer goal: to identify his own battles that mirrored those of the legendary figures he admired. Yet every time he sat before the blank page, the weight of his insecurities would hover, an oppressive cloud blocking his creative light. Determined to overcome this block, he devised a plan: quick sketches of his memories to turn into stories. Each sketch would include not only the pivotal moments of pain and resilience but feelings intertwined with those events. Jack envisioned these outlines like shields, crafted to protect his vulnerability while still inviting his audience into the raw honesty of his experiences. One quiet evening, while the sun cast long shadows across his cluttered desk, Jack picked up his pen, ignoring the lingering doubts that whispered for him to stop. He began with the memory of his first day at a new school. The scene bloomed vividly: his hesitant footsteps, the laughter that greeted him like burning coals in an open wound, and the sense of isolation that engulfed him like a heavy fog. In writing, he allowed the tension to seep through his ink, capturing both the agony of that moment and the flicker of defiance that followed when he stood his ground. "I can't let fear define me," he wrote. It was a mantra he repeated, a reminder that resonated within him. With each sentence, he felt his power reclaiming the narrative of his history, punctuating the fears with the victories he had forged through sheer willpower. But doubt still coiled tightly within him, a persistent whisper that continued to prompt questions. What right did he have to share such a personal journey? Could he really inspire others? This question nagged at him, and to find answers, Jack sought counsel once again. He sent a message to Sarah, proposing a casual meetup at their favorite coffee shop. He needed to discuss not only the stories he found in his sketches but the ongoing battle with revealing his true self. When they settled at a small corner table, Jack dove into the complex tangle of thoughts that enveloped his mind. "I've been writing about my experiences, trying to connect them to the vulnerabilities we all hide away, but I still hesitate to share it. What if I unravel everything and it falls flat?" Sarah leaned forward, her brow furrowed, clearly wrestling with her own thoughts. "Jack, have you ever thought that your story, your struggles, might just resonate with someone who feels lost? It's not about being perfect. It's about showing what it means to be human. That's what makes people connect." Her words struck a nerve, igniting an ember inside him. He realized that the true test wasn't whether he would face judgment or skepticism but whether he was brave enough to embrace his flawed humanity. The fear of exposure seemed daunting, Yet the thought of possibly touching another's life lingered in his mind like a distant, hopeful light. As he left the cafe, Jack wasn't certain of his path, but felt an undeniable shift within him. The uncertainty now sparked determination, a fighting spirit ignited by the prospect of connection through shared experience. Returning to his writing space, he revisited his sketches with renewed vigor. He let go of the pressure to be a polished knight, reassessing the stories through the lens of mutual struggle rather than mere confession. Each page turned became a tapestry of struggle and triumph, a narrative he could share while remaining genuine. Still, his heart raced at the prospect of unveiling his truth. What if adhering to his newfound sense of authenticity alienated the very people he hoped to connect with? As those thoughts threatened to overwhelm him, Jack took a deep breath and continued to write, realizing that the real battle lay ahead not just in the sharing of his stories, but in embracing their impact on his evolving narrative. Would he hold on to this resolve, or would the looming specter of judgment entwine around him one more time, snuffing out the light of his bravery? Jack's fingers hovered over the page, a moment suspended in the air like the tension before a storm. The scant light from his desk lamp drew shadows across his sketches, illuminated fragments of his past that both frightened and inspired him. The doubts still whispering in his mind felt like chains weighing him down, constricting his ability to take that leap into the unknown. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, picturing the knights he had researched, men who had faced their demons armed only with courage and conviction. What made them stand tall against their fears? Had they ever felt the same icy grip of doubt? It was time to find out. If he was to turn vulnerability into strength, he needed to confront his fears head-on, not just in thought, but in action. Determined, Jack opened his eyes and picked up his pen. This time, he wouldn't write merely about the fear. He would examine how he could wield it like a sword, transforming pain into purpose. What he had once viewed as shame would be recrafted into a badge of honor, a testament to his journey. He began crafting the story of his second significant memory, the day he had chosen to stand up for a classmate being bullied. The electric charge of emotion surged through him as he remembered how his heart raced, entangled with fear and righteous anger, urging him to act. The scene unfolded vividly as his pen began to move. The tension in the air, the taunts that propelled him forward, the split-second decision to step in that would alter the course of his day. "I can be a hero even just for a moment," he scribbled, capturing the essence of that day. As he chronicled the adrenaline-fueled confrontation, Jack felt an electrifying shift within him. He was no longer just a spectator in his own life. He was the protagonist, the knight of his tale, battling inner and outer dragons alike. Jack poured himself into the writing, capturing not only the act of courage but the aftermath, the judgment from peers, the split opinions that threatened to drown him in isolation. Yet, woven into the fabric of this experience was a surprising clarity. The progression from fear to bravery could be messy, but it was real and relatable. However, his heart pounded with the realization that these memories weren't just hopeless anecdotes, they were battle scars that defined him. As his story developed, so did a profound revelation. The rawness of these experiences gave him a voice. He didn't need to wear a facade of brilliance. His authenticity would be the bridge to others facing similar battles. With every keystroke, Jack's hesitation began to crumble, yet new questions emerged. How much was too much to share? What if he exposed his vulnerabilities, only to be met with rejection or misunderstanding? Each story written felt liberating but frightening, the duality of emotions sparking a fierce internal conflict. He stopped typing, the pen poised over paper, considering whether he was truly ready to unveil these chapters of his life. The flicker of self-doubt nudged against the assertiveness he had begun to cultivate. This was just the beginning, and there was no looking back now. It was late by the time Jack finally stepped away from his desk, a swirl of emotions whirling through his chest. He felt exhilarated yet terrified, liberated yet exposed. His personal battles were now crystallizing into narratives, each one a potential pathway to connect with another soul. But he knew the next step would demand the utmost courage, the moment he would have to decide how to share these intimacies and trust in the power of his truth. In that pivotal instant, realization washed over him. The more he revealed his scars, the more he might piece together the mosaic of vulnerability that was his life. But with the anticipation of making his stories public loomed another fear: what if judgment loomed larger than the connection he sought? Jack took a deep breath, grounding himself. The challenge ahead would not only refine his stories but also define him as a storyteller. Each ink stroke was no longer just a mark on paper. It was a pact with himself to embrace his journey, the good and the bad. With this clarity, his heart racing, Jack resolved to prepare for the next step. But as he surveyed his writings, the uncertainty lingered. Could he truly connect with others through these tales? As the questions festered in his head, a sense of urgency pulsed through him. The moment of truth was approaching, and he was ready to face whatever awaited, poised to share not just the stories of his past, but the revelations of his evolving spirit. Jack awoke the next morning with a clarity he had not felt in a long time. The weight of his previous fears still lingered, yet it was a burden he now recognized as a catalyst rather than a setback. The sun streamed through his window, illuminating the chaotic dance of sketches and notes piled on his desk. It signaled the dawn of not just a new day, but a new chapter in his life. He sat up, a resolve crystallizing within him. Today would not be about merely writing. Jack decided he would also explore how to share his narratives. He envisioned an audience, the strangers and fellow warriors battling their own dragons, seeking solace and solidarity in stories. His heart raced at the thought. Could he transform the raw essence of his experiences into something actionable, something relatable? As he positioned himself at the desk, steam from a freshly brewed cup of coffee wafted in the air, invigorating him. He grabbed a notebook and began jotting down a laid-out plan. This was more than outlining a memoir. It was developing a strategy to unveil himself while maintaining the sanctity of his vulnerability. Jack considered the right platform to express these deep-seated feelings. Should he blog or perhaps start a podcast? The idea of creating a small community around shared experiences sparked a thrill, yet skepticism nagged at him. What if his voice faltered? What if he stumbled while sharing tales of bravery that wavered in the face of judgment? The internal battle raged, but he redirected it into a different focus. Perhaps he would practice first. He could seek out open mics or local workshops. His hand shook slightly as he scribbled down public speaking on the list. That terrified him, yet excitement surged at the notion of standing before real people, sharing stories that had previously only been whispered into the solitude of his room. As the hours passed, Jack engaged in a flurry of activity. He read books on storytelling and public speaking, each page filling the voids created by uncertainty with insights and strategies. The once daunting blueprint imaged itself before him, steps into building confidence and crafting the delivery of his personal narratives. Soon after, it struck him like a bolt of lightning. What if he faced his fears directly? He could integrate the stories of those who had also struggled, weaving their narratives with his own. A collaborative project, perhaps interviews with friends and family about their moments of courage. He could create a tapestry of interconnected lives, proving that vulnerability was a common thread binding us all. With newfound creativity, he rushed to his desk and began drafting a list of people to reach out to, each name rekindling warmth as he envisioned their faces lighting up at the prospect of sharing. He considered how their tales could resonate with his own and reflect the universal struggles of growth, resilience, and bravery. Yet, the weight of one question remained. Would they trust him with their stories? For all the planning and excitement, he recalled that vulnerability must be met with precise openness. Would he be able to honor their truths alongside his? This consideration raised a new layer to his quest. He would need to cultivate a safe space for honest dialogue, ensuring each participant felt empowered amidst the uncertainty of sharing. The sun dipped lower in the sky as Jack gathered his notes, feeling a palpable shift within himself. He had transitioned from a writer paralyzed by self-doubt to a curator of shared experiences, a channel for authenticity. But along with the thrill came the growing anticipation of sharing those intimate stories with the world. But in that moment of empowerment lay another question that lingered uncomfortably in his mind. What if, in bearing himself and others, he uncovered wounds too deep to heal? The road ahead promised to be fraught with unexpected revelations, bringing both connection and fear. He knew the time had come to embark on this journey. Tomorrow he would pick up the phone and connect with those names etched in his notes, risking rejection or acceptance. Each call would be a step into uncharted territory, a confrontation with that lingering fear because the time had come to face not just the stories of his past, but the emotional truths of others that could transform them all. Jack had not anticipated how sharply the transformation would hit him once he committed to baring his soul and intertwining the experiences of others with his narrative. The following days represented an odyssey of courage. As he reached out, his friends and family responded with unexpected generosity. Their stories wove a rich tapestry of shared struggles, accomplishments, and yet lingering vulnerabilities. It felt as if he had begun a crucible of connection, one that promised both discovery and challenge. On the morning of his first interview, the sunlight cascaded through his window like a herald of his impending journey. Sitting at his desk, nerves bubbled within him, but he didn't let fear define his anticipation. This was a historic moment, one that echoed the courage of the knights whose stories he cherished. He was not just connecting with others. He was creating an authentic narrative built on trust. Diana, his oldest friend, was the first participant he interviewed. Over coffee in their favorite cafe, Jack initiated the conversation, carefully framing his questions to elicit deeper truths. As she spoke of her struggles with self-esteem and the battles she faced every day, Jack listened intently, taking mental notes of her raw honesty and the subdued strength that lay just beneath the surface. "I've always felt like I had to put on a mask," she confessed, staring down at her untouched cup of coffee. "To be perfect, to please everyone. But inside, I'm just scared." Her words ignited something within Jack. The vulnerability she exuded reminded him of his own fears, clarifying the harmony that connected their different yet similar journeys. He was not alone. They were comrades in arms, fighting insecurity with the weapons of honesty and empathy. After this empowering conversation, he felt a surge of energy flow through him. He couldn't wait to share Diana's story alongside his own. Each interaction progressively built towards a fuller picture of what it meant to confront fear head-on, bestowing others with a power he had just begun to understand. He discovered that vulnerability was not just a risk. It was a bridge that connected hearts. Jack conducted interviews over the next few weeks, each one reinforcing his resolve. As he developed a format to showcase these narratives, he felt a solid confidence emerge, rippling through him like a wave of clarity. This project, he began referring to it as Echoes of Courage, was transforming into something significant, the embodiment of his newfound identity. It would weave together individual stories into a cohesive narrative that spoke to the universality of human experience, reflecting the triumph of authenticity over adversity. As the completion date for Echoes of Courage approached, Jack was overwhelmed with both excitement and anxiety. He had crafted a collection of powerful, interconnected stories, each voice raw, genuine, and now it was time to share it with the world. On the day he released his project, he felt the familiar quiver of apprehension settle into his stomach, but there was a new layer of solidarity woven into that fear. Jack had fostered relationships through dialogue, revealing layers of intimacy as he integrated the threads of his life with those of others. He was ready. This felt right. The reactions were immediate, overwhelming his senses like the cheers of a victorious battlefield. Comments and messages began to pour in, each one echoing gratitude for the stories shared. Readers expressed how deeply they resonated with both Jack's and his collaborators' narratives. Connections blossomed, like wildflowers after a fierce storm, renewing his spirit as he realized the impact his work was having. But the acknowledgement didn't come from numbers as much as it did from the heartfelt messages that filled the comments section. People reached out, sharing their own stories inspired by the honesty displayed in Echoes of Courage. Jack had unlocked a profound realization. Vulnerability had the power to dismantle walls. Miss Stanton got in touch, acknowledging the growth she observed in him. "You've truly become a storyteller of substance, Jack. Your courage to reveal both personal and communal truths has created ripples far beyond your expectations. You are no longer just chronicling battles of the past. You are championing the authenticity of the present." In that moment, Jack felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. The recognition crystallized a milestone in his journey. He had conquered more than the stage. He had transformed his insecurities into strengths, channeling bearing the depths of his vulnerabilities into a unifying force among others. Now, standing on the precipice of his next chapter, he addressed the gathering of his friends and family at a small launch gathering for Echoes of Courage. As he shared his gratitude and the lessons learned from both his journey and theirs, he reflected on his evolution, a metamorphosis fueled by real stories and authentic connections. "I stand before you not as a knight of perfection," he said, a solid confidence rooting him, "but as a proud warrior who battled doubts and emerged stronger through the stories of shared courage." The applause resonated like an anthem that swelled in strength, echoing around him. Jack felt a profound sense of belonging, validated by those who had traversed their paths alongside him. However, this was only the beginning. The knight within was continually propelled forward, ever ready to face new battles armed with courage and an unwavering sense of authenticity. It dawned on him transformation wasn't a destination. It was an ongoing journey. He had truly emerged from the shadows of self-doubt into the light of resilience, and with it, an everlasting commitment to embrace both his own narrative and the stories of others. This was not just a tale of personal fulfillment. It was a shared legacy, a movement waiting to inspire a myriad of other warriors, ready to pen their own chronicles of courage. Now is the time to harness that same courage and take action. You need to subscribe now to stay updated on these transformative stories of resilience. Leave a like now to show your support and reach out to those who need it. Comment below with your thoughts and theories about Jack's journey and those echoes of courage. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who would be inspired to begin their own journeys of courage and authenticity. Don't wait even one more second. Let us spread the power of storytelling together.